The Arizona sun blazed mercilessly overhead as Sarah Chen gripped the steering wheel of her dusty pickup truck, navigating the familiar stretch of Interstate 17 that connected Phoenix to the majestic Grand Canyon. At 22 years old, Sarah had made this journey countless times during her college years at Arizona State University, but today felt different, charged with an electricity that had nothing to do with the desert heat. Her four best friends sat around her in the extended cab truck, their voices creating a symphony of excitement and anticipation that had become the soundtrack of their friendship over the past 4 years. Marcus Thompson occupied the passenger seat, his geology textbook scattered at his feet as he pointed out rock formations visible from the highway, while in the back seat, Emma Rodriguez scrolled through her camera settings, determined to capture the perfect sunset photographs that would commemorate their final adventure together as a complete group. Beside Emma, Tyler Williams tapped rhythmically on his phone screen, creating a playlist that he claimed would be the perfect musical accompaniment to watching the sun disappear behind one of the world's most spectacular natural wonders. Jake Morrison, the most adventurous member of their tight-knit circle, reviewed their carefully planned itinerary for what he had dubbed their graduation celebration weekend, a 3-day adventure that would serve as their farewell to the carefree days of college life before they scattered across the country to pursue their individual careers and dreams. The friendship between these 5 young adults had been forged during their freshman year at ASU, when a random dormitory assignment had placed Sarah and Emma as roommates, and a shared love of outdoor adventures had gradually expanded their circle to include Marcus, Tyler, and Jake. Over the years, they had explored every corner of Arizona together, from the red rocks of Sedona to the saguaro forests of the Sonoran Desert, but the Grand Canyon had always held a special place in their collective heart as the crown jewel of their adventures. Each semester, they had made the pilgrimage north to witness the changing seasons paint the canyon walls in different hues, creating a tradition that had become as essential to their college experience as final exams and spring break. Sarah had grown up in a traditional Chinese-American family in Central Phoenix, where her parents operated a successful restaurant while maintaining strong connections to their cultural heritage, instilling in Sarah a deep appreciation for hard work, family loyalty, and the value of genuine friendships. The opportunity to attend ASU on a full academic scholarship had opened doors that previous generations of her family had only dreamed of, and these 4 friends had become her chosen family, the people who understood her dreams and supported her ambitions without reservation or judgment. The conversation in the truck that May afternoon covered the usual topics that occupied the minds of college seniors facing the transition to adult life: job interviews, graduate school applications, student loan payments, and the inevitable question of whether their friendships would survive the geographic distances that their careers would soon impose. Jake had accepted a position with an outdoor adventure company in Colorado, while Emma planned to pursue freelance photography in Los Angeles, chasing her dream of working with major magazines and advertising agencies. Tyler had been accepted to law school at the University of Washington in Seattle, and Marcus had secured a coveted internship with the National Park Service that could lead to a permanent ranger position after graduation. Sarah herself faced the most uncertain future of the group, as her degree in environmental science had opened several potential paths, including graduate school, entry-level positions with conservation organizations, or the possibility of joining her family's business and expanding it into sustainable food practices, a dream that had been growing stronger with each environmental science class she had completed. The uncertainty of their individual futures made this weekend feel even more precious, a final opportunity to create memories together before life inevitably pulled them in different directions. As they approached the turnoff toward Grand Canyon National Park, the landscape began its dramatic transformation from the flat desert terrain around Flagstaff to the pine forests and elevated terrain that signaled their approach to one of Arizona's most treasured destinations. Emma had researched extensively to identify the perfect viewpoint for watching the sunset, eventually settling on a lesser-known area called Mojave Point, which offered spectacular panoramic views without the crowds that typically gathered at more popular locations like Hopi Point or Desert View. The plan was simple and perfect in its simplicity. Arrive at the canyon in the late afternoon, set up their camping gear at a nearby campground, and then position themselves at Mojave Point in time to watch the sun paint the canyon walls in the brilliant oranges, reds, and purples that had made Grand Canyon sunsets legendary among photographers and nature lovers worldwide. Sarah had packed enough food and supplies for several days, including her homemade Chinese dumplings that had become her signature contribution to their adventures, along with trail mix and the green tea that reminded her of home. Tyler had brought his portable speaker and carefully curated playlist, while Jake had packed his telescope for stargazing after the sunset, when the clear desert sky would reveal a spectacular display of stars, unmarred by the light pollution that obscured the night sky in Phoenix. The afternoon temperature hovered around 95 degrees as they completed the final miles of their journey, but the elevation gain toward the Grand Canyon promised cooler temperatures and relief from the desert heat that had been building throughout the day. Sarah felt a familiar surge of excitement as the first glimpses of the canyon came into view through the pine trees, a preview of the spectacular vistas that awaited them at their destination. The group's energy reached a crescendo as they passed through the park entrance, where a friendly ranger provided them with maps, safety information, and recommendations for the best sunset viewing locations. Emma immediately began photographing everything she could see, from the massive pine trees that lined the park roads to the distant glimpses of canyon walls that appeared between the branches. Tyler started his playlist prematurely, filling the truck with acoustic guitar melodies that seemed to perfectly complement the natural beauty surrounding them. Jake consulted his detailed adventure guide and confirmed that they were running exactly on schedule, arriving with plenty of time to set up their campsite and reach Mojave Point before the optimal sunset viewing time. The campground they had reserved was located in the Mather Campground area, a well-maintained facility that provided access to basic amenities while maintaining the rustic atmosphere that made camping at the Grand Canyon such a unique experience. Setting up their tents took longer than anticipated, partly because Emma insisted on photographing every step of the process, and partly because Tyler kept getting distracted by the various wildlife that wandered through the campground, including several Steller's jays and a family of elk that grazed peacefully in a nearby meadow. Sarah and Marcus worked together to establish their shared tent, their movements coordinated by years of camping experience together, while Jake organized the cooking supplies and Emma documented everything with her camera. The familiar routine of setting up camp had always been one of Sarah's favorite parts of their adventures, a ritual that marked the transition from the stress and responsibilities of daily life to the freedom and simplicity of life in nature. The afternoon passed quickly as they completed their preparations, grabbed a quick meal of sandwiches and Sarah's homemade dumplings, and gathered their sunset viewing supplies for the short hike to Mojave Point. The trail to Mojave Point was relatively easy, a well-maintained path that wound through pine and juniper trees before opening onto the spectacular vistas that had drawn millions of visitors to the Grand Canyon over the decades. As they approached the viewpoint, the canyon revealed itself gradually, teasing them with glimpses of its immensity before finally opening into the full panoramic view that never failed to take their breath away. Emma immediately began setting up her camera equipment, adjusting settings and experimenting with different angles, while the others found comfortable spots along the rim where they could sit and watch the approaching sunset. The temperature had dropped to a perfect 70 degrees, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and the sound of ravens calling from the canyon depths. Tyler's music provided a perfect soundtrack as they settled in to wait for the sun to begin its descent toward the western horizon, each of them lost in their own thoughts about the beauty of the moment and the bittersweet nature of endings and new beginnings. Sarah found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed since that first trip to the Grand Canyon during her freshman year, when she had been overwhelmed by the scale and majesty of the landscape and uncertain about her ability to balance her family's expectations with her own academic ambitions. These friends had supported her through difficult conversations with her parents about her career choices, celebrated her achievements, and provided the emotional foundation that had allowed her to thrive academically while maintaining her cultural identity. The thought of losing daily contact with people who understood both her American dreams and her Chinese heritage was both exciting and terrifying, a reminder that growth often required leaving behind the safety and comfort of familiar relationships. As she watched Emma adjust her camera settings for the 100th time and listened to Jake and Marcus debate the geological formations visible in the canyon walls, Sarah felt a deep gratitude for the serendipity that had brought these 5 people together and the shared experiences that had created bonds stronger than family ties. The approaching sunset would mark more than just the end of another day. It would symbolize the end of an era in all of their lives, the final moments of a chapter they would remember and treasure for decades to come. Jake consulted his watch and announced that the optimal sunset time was approaching, prompting everyone to position themselves along the rim with their cameras, phones, and personal viewing preferences. Emma had claimed a spot with an unobstructed view of the western horizon, her professional camera mounted on a tripod and ready to capture the changing light as it transformed the canyon walls from their daytime browns and tans to the brilliant colors that made Grand Canyon sunsets legendary. Marcus and Tyler found a comfortable boulder where they could sit side by side, their friendship evident in their easy conversation and shared appreciation for the natural spectacle they were about to witness. Jake positioned himself with his adventure journal, planning to document not just the visual beauty of the sunset, but also his thoughts about this significant moment in their friendship. Sarah chose a spot slightly apart from the others, wanting to experience the sunset both as part of the group and as an individual, creating her own personal memory of this perfect moment when everything in her life felt aligned and full of possibility. The sun began its descent toward the western rim of the canyon at exactly the time Emma's research had predicted, creating the first hints of the spectacular light show that would unfold over the next 30 minutes. The initial changes were subtle, a gradual warming of the light that bathed the canyon walls and a deepening of the shadows in the side canyons and crevices that gave the landscape its dramatic three-dimensional appearance. Emma's camera began clicking rapidly as she captured the evolving light, while Tyler increased the volume on his playlist to match the growing intensity of the natural spectacle. The temperature continued to drop as the sun moved lower in the sky, but none of them noticed the chill as they became completely absorbed in watching one of nature's most reliable and spectacular performances. Sarah felt a sense of perfect contentment as she watched her friends enjoy the moment, each of them experiencing the sunset in their own unique way while sharing in the collective wonder that had brought them together so many times over the past 4 years. As the sun approached the horizon, the canyon walls began to glow with the warm colors that photographers and artists had been trying to capture for over a century. The limestone and sandstone layers that comprise the canyon's geological history became a canvas for light, with each different rock formation reflecting the sunset in its own distinctive way. Emma's excitement was palpable as she moved between different camera positions, trying to capture not just the overall scene, but also the detailed interplay of light and shadow that created the canyon's ever-changing appearance. Marcus pointed out specific geological features that their environmental science classes had taught them to recognize, while Tyler provided a running commentary on how the changing light affected the colors and visibility of different parts of the canyon. Jake wrote furiously in his adventure journal, trying to capture in words what the camera could only approximate. Sarah simply watched and listened, storing every detail in her memory and feeling grateful for the opportunity to share this perfect moment with the people who meant the most to her in the world. The final minutes before sunset brought the most dramatic changes, as the sun's position created the deep reds and purples that had made the Grand Canyon sunset one of the most photographed natural phenomena in North America. The entire canyon seemed to glow from within, as if lit by an internal fire that brought every detail into sharp relief while simultaneously creating a dreamlike quality that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. Emma's camera captured image after image, but even her professional equipment could only approximate the full spectrum of colors and the three-dimensional quality of the light as it played across the complex topography of the canyon. The 5 friends fell silent as the sun touched the western rim, each of them absorbing the magnitude of what they were witnessing and the significance of sharing this moment together before their lives took them in different directions. The silence that followed the sunset was broken by the sound of footsteps approaching from the trail behind them, causing all 5 friends to turn simultaneously toward the unexpected intrusion on their private moment. A middle-aged man in hiking gear appeared on the path, breathing heavily and appearing distressed as he approached their group at the viewpoint. He introduced himself as David Rodriguez, a local search and rescue volunteer who had been looking for a missing hiker in the area since early morning. The missing person was a young woman about their age who had been camping alone near Mojave Point and had failed to return to her campsite the previous evening, causing concern among park rangers and her family back in Phoenix. David explained that he had been checking all the popular viewpoints and trails in the area, hoping to find some trace of the missing hiker or anyone who might have seen her during the past 24 hours. The unexpected encounter with the search and rescue volunteer created an immediate shift in the mood of their celebration, transforming their perfect sunset experience into something more complex and serious as they realized that someone else's adventure had taken a dangerous turn. David showed them a photograph of the missing hiker, a young woman named Lisa Patterson, who bore a striking resemblance to Sarah, with similar Asian features and long black hair that made Sarah's friends do a double-take when they saw the image. Lisa had been reported missing by her roommate when she failed to return to their shared apartment in Phoenix, and her car had been found in the Mojave Point parking area with all her camping gear still inside, suggesting that something unexpected had occurred during her solo hiking adventure. The search and rescue team had been working systematically through the area since dawn, but the vast scale of the Grand Canyon made finding a single missing person an enormous challenge, especially if she had wandered off established trails or had experienced an accident in one of the many remote areas surrounding the popular viewpoints. David asked if any of them had noticed a solo female hiker during their time at Mojave Point, particularly someone who might have seemed disoriented, injured, or in distress, but none of Sarah's group could recall seeing anyone matching Lisa's description during their afternoon at the canyon. The conversation with David revealed additional concerning details about Lisa's disappearance that made Sarah and her friends increasingly worried about the missing hiker's safety. Lisa had been an experienced outdoors enthusiast who had visited the Grand Canyon many times over the past several years, making it unlikely that she would have simply gotten lost on familiar trails or made basic errors in wilderness safety. Her camping equipment suggested that she had been prepared for multiple days in the wilderness, with adequate food, water, and emergency supplies. But her failure to return to her campsite or contact anyone for over 24 hours was completely out of character, according to her family and friends. David explained that the search and rescue team was particularly concerned because the weather forecast predicted a significant temperature drop overnight, and even experienced hikers could face serious risks if they were injured, lost, or stranded without proper shelter during the cold desert night. The urgency in David's voice made it clear that Lisa's situation was becoming more dangerous with each passing hour, and that every available resource was being mobilized to locate her before conditions became life-threatening. As darkness began to settle over the Grand Canyon, David asked if Sarah's group would be willing to help with the search effort by staying alert during their planned camping experience and reporting any signs of the missing hiker to park rangers or search and rescue personnel. The 5 friends immediately agreed to help, with Jake volunteering to use his telescope to scan distant areas of the canyon for any signs of emergency signals or campfires, while Emma offered to use her camera equipment to document any potential evidence they might discover during their stay in the area. Sarah felt a particular connection to the search effort because of her physical resemblance to the missing hiker, and she found herself imagining what it would feel like to be lost and alone in the vast wilderness that surrounded them. The transition from their celebratory sunset experience to active participation in a search and rescue operation created a sobering reminder of how quickly circumstances could change in wilderness environments, and how the same natural beauty that attracted millions of visitors could also pose serious dangers to those who were unprepared or unlucky. The group decided to modify their camping plans to better support the search effort, choosing to set up their tents closer to Mojave Point, so they could maintain visual contact with the area where Lisa had last been seen. Tyler created a more subdued playlist, appropriate for their changed circumstances, while Marcus used his geological knowledge to identify potential areas where someone might seek shelter or become trapped if they had wandered off established trails. Emma prepared her camera equipment for potential night photography, knowing that any evidence they might discover would need to be carefully documented for the search and rescue team. Sarah took responsibility for coordinating communication with David and other search personnel, using her cell phone to maintain contact despite the limited signal strength in the remote canyon area. The evening that had been planned as a celebration of their friendship had transformed into something more meaningful, an opportunity to use their combined skills and resources to help someone in genuine need. As the temperature dropped and full darkness settled over the canyon, the five friends established a systematic watch schedule that would allow them to monitor the area throughout the night while ensuring that everyone got adequate rest. Sarah volunteered for the first watch, positioning herself at a vantage point where she could observe both the immediate Mojave Point area and the broader canyon vista using Jake's telescope and Emma's high-powered camera with night vision capabilities. The desert night was remarkably clear, with minimal light pollution revealing a spectacular display of stars that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. However, Sarah found herself focused entirely on scanning for any signs of human activity in the vast landscape below, looking for emergency signals, campfires, or any other indication that Lisa might be alive and trying to attract attention from rescuers. The responsibility of potentially being the person who spotted the missing hiker weighed heavily on Sarah's mind as she maintained her vigilant watch through the early hours of the night. During her watch, Sarah noticed several areas of the canyon where natural formations created shadows and hidden spaces that could easily conceal a person from aerial searches or observation from the rim trails. The complexity of the canyon's topography became even more apparent in the darkness, as her night vision equipment revealed countless crevices, overhangs, and side canyons that would be nearly impossible to search thoroughly without specialized technical rescue equipment. She began to understand why David and the other search and rescue personnel had seemed so concerned about the challenges they faced in locating Lisa, and why every hour of delay made the search more difficult and dangerous. The vastness of the search area, combined with the technical challenges of accessing many potential locations where someone might be stranded, created a situation where even experienced rescue teams with modern equipment faced enormous obstacles in conducting a comprehensive search operation. When Marcus took over the watch duties around midnight, Sarah shared her observations about the challenging terrain and the numerous areas that would be difficult to search effectively from their position on the rim. Marcus used his geological expertise to identify specific formations and drainage patterns that might attract someone seeking shelter or water, and he began creating a rough map of priority areas that might be worth investigating more thoroughly if the search continued into the following day. His systematic approach to analyzing the landscape impressed Sarah and reminded her of why she valued his friendship so much, as his calm, analytical mindset provided stability and practical solutions even in stressful situations. The two of them spent several minutes discussing potential search strategies and identifying landmarks that could help guide search teams toward areas with the highest probability of finding the missing hiker. The night passed slowly, with each member of their group taking turns maintaining watch while the others attempted to rest in their tents. None of them slept well, as the combination of concern for Lisa's safety and the unfamiliar responsibility of participating in a search and rescue operation kept them alert and anxious throughout the night. Emma used her watch time to experiment with different camera settings and night photography techniques, hoping to develop methods that might be useful for documenting evidence or searching remote areas that were difficult to observe with the naked eye. Tyler spent his watch time listening carefully for any sounds that might indicate human presence in the canyon, using his experience with audio equipment to distinguish between natural wilderness sounds and potential signs of someone in distress. Jake used his telescope systematically to scan different sections of the canyon, creating a detailed log of areas that had been observed and any interesting features or anomalies that might warrant further investigation. As dawn began to break over the Grand Canyon, painting the eastern rim with the soft colors that preceded sunrise, Sarah's group prepared to conclude their night watch and coordinate with the search and rescue teams that would be resuming their efforts with full daylight. David had arranged to meet them at their campsite early in the morning to debrief them on any observations they had made during the night and to discuss how they might continue to assist with the search effort during their remaining time in the area. The sunrise over the Grand Canyon was spectacular, but the beauty of the moment was overshadowed by their continued concern for Lisa's welfare and their growing understanding of the serious challenges faced by search and rescue operations in such vast and complex terrain. Sarah felt a mixture of frustration and determination as she realized that despite their best efforts throughout the night, they had not discovered any signs of the missing hiker, but she also felt proud of how her group had come together to support the search effort. When David arrived at their campsite shortly after sunrise, he brought both discouraging news about the ongoing search and a new development that would significantly impact Sarah's group's involvement in the rescue operation. The professional search and rescue teams had worked throughout the night using thermal imaging equipment and specialized technical rescue gear, but they had not located any signs of Lisa or evidence of her whereabouts since her disappearance. However, David explained that the search effort was being expanded to include areas further from Mojave Point, and he asked if Sarah's group would be willing to relocate their camping base to assist with searching a remote area called Hermit Creek, where some potential evidence had been discovered by an early morning helicopter reconnaissance flight. The evidence consisted of what appeared to be hiking gear scattered near a creek bed approximately 5 miles from Mojave Point, but the area was accessible only by challenging hiking trails that required experienced wilderness travelers and specialized equipment. The decision to relocate their camping base and participate in the expanded search effort represented a significant change from their original weekend plans, but all 5 friends immediately agreed to help without hesitation. Sarah felt particularly motivated to continue the search because she had developed a personal connection to Lisa's situation and couldn't imagine abandoning the effort while someone was still missing and potentially in danger. The group quickly broke down their campsite and repacked their equipment for the more challenging hike to Hermit Creek, with Jake taking the lead in reorganizing their supplies to include additional emergency equipment that David provided from search and rescue resources. Emma prepared her camera equipment for documenting any potential evidence they might discover, while Marcus studied topographical maps of the Hermit Creek area to identify the most efficient routes and potential hazards they might encounter during the more technical hiking required to reach the search area. The hike to Hermit Creek was significantly more challenging than any of the trails they had experienced during their previous Grand Canyon adventures, requiring technical hiking skills and careful navigation through terrain that was much more remote and less developed than the popular tourist areas where they usually spent their time. Sarah found herself drawing on reserves of physical and mental strength that she hadn't realized she possessed, as the combination of difficult terrain and the serious purpose of their mission pushed her beyond her previous comfort zone in wilderness environments. The trail descended steeply into the canyon through a series of switchbacks that required careful attention to footing and balance, while also providing spectacular views of geological formations and side canyons that would have been fascinating under different circumstances. Tyler and Marcus worked together to help carry some of the heavier technical equipment that David had provided, while Jake used his navigation skills to ensure they stayed on the correct route toward the area where the potential evidence had been spotted. As they approached the Hermit Creek area, the terrain became even more complex, with the trail following the creek bed through narrow canyon sections that created natural bottlenecks where someone could easily become trapped or disoriented. Emma began photographing the area systematically, creating a visual record that could be useful for the search teams while also documenting the challenging conditions that made the search so difficult. The scattered hiking gear that had been spotted from the helicopter was located near a natural pool where the creek formed a small oasis surrounded by red rock walls that rose several hundred feet on all sides. The equipment appeared to have been there for at least 24 hours based on its condition and the way it had been scattered by wind and water, but there were no immediate signs of Lisa herself or any indication of what had happened to separate her from her gear. David and other search team members who had arrived at Hermit Creek through different routes began a systematic investigation of the scattered equipment, while Sarah's group helped establish a base camp that would support more intensive search operations in the area. The hiking gear included a backpack, water bottles, and clothing that were consistent with what Lisa had been carrying when she disappeared, but there were also some items that didn't match the inventory of her known equipment, suggesting that other hikers might have been in the area recently or that the evidence was more complex than initially appeared. Sarah found herself studying the scene carefully, trying to understand what sequence of events might have led to the equipment being scattered in this particular location, while also feeling increasingly concerned about what the absence of Lisa herself might indicate about her current condition and whereabouts. The investigation of the evidence at Hermit Creek revealed additional clues that both advanced the search effort and raised new questions about what had happened to Lisa during her solo hiking adventure. Some of the scattered equipment showed signs of damage that could indicate a fall or other accident, but there were also indications that the gear might have been deliberately placed or arranged rather than simply dropped or lost during an emergency. David explained that this type of evidence pattern was not uncommon in search and rescue operations, as missing persons sometimes cached equipment in safe locations while attempting to travel light during self-rescue efforts, or as a way of leaving signs for potential rescuers to follow. However, the specific arrangement of the items and their location near the natural pool suggested that Lisa might have been in the area more recently than originally estimated, possibly within the past 12 hours rather than the 24 hours that had been assumed based on when she was first reported missing. The expanded search effort at Hermit Creek required Sarah's group to extend their stay in the wilderness and take on more significant responsibilities in supporting the technical rescue operation that was developing around the discovery of the evidence. Jake volunteered to serve as a communication relay between the base camp at Hermit Creek and the command post at Mojave Point, using his knowledge of radio equipment and wilderness communication protocols to help coordinate the various search teams that were now working in multiple locations throughout the canyon. Emma continued her systematic photography of the area, but also began using her equipment to help search teams document potential routes that Lisa might have taken from the location where her equipment was found. Tyler and Marcus worked together to help establish secure camping facilities for the expanded search operation, while Sarah took on the role of liaison with David and other search team leaders, helping to coordinate the civilian volunteers who were supporting the professional rescue efforts. As the second day of the search operation progressed, Sarah began to notice that her involvement in the rescue effort was changing her in ways that went beyond simply helping with an emergency situation. The responsibility of potentially saving someone's life, combined with the technical challenges of working in such demanding wilderness conditions, was revealing capabilities and interests that she hadn't previously recognized in herself. The systematic approach required for conducting effective search operations appealed to her analytical mind, while the teamwork and coordination aspects of the rescue effort felt like a natural extension of the leadership roles she had taken in various environmental science projects during college. Her friends also noticed the changes in Sarah's demeanor and approach to the situation, as she seemed to be thriving in the high-pressure environment and demonstrating skills that none of them had seen her display in their previous shared experiences. The third day of the search operation brought a breakthrough that would fundamentally change both the rescue effort and Sarah's understanding of her own capabilities and future direction. A helicopter reconnaissance team spotted what appeared to be a person waving from a remote ledge approximately 2 miles from Hermit Creek, in an area that was accessible only through technical rock climbing or specialized helicopter rescue operations. The figure on the ledge appeared to match Lisa's general description, and rescue teams immediately began mobilizing the equipment and personnel necessary for a complex technical rescue in extremely challenging terrain. Sarah's group was asked to relocate once again to support the rescue operation from a position where they could provide ground-based assistance and communication support for the helicopter and climbing teams that would attempt to reach the stranded hiker. The technical rescue operation that followed was unlike anything Sarah had ever witnessed, involving specialized equipment, highly trained personnel, and precise coordination between multiple teams working in dangerous conditions. She found herself serving as a critical communication link between different components of the rescue effort, using skills she had developed during her environmental science fieldwork, but applying them in a much more intense and consequential situation. The successful rescue of Lisa, who had indeed been stranded on the remote ledge after a hiking accident had left her unable to return to established trails, provided a dramatic conclusion to the search effort, but also marked the beginning of a significant change in Sarah's understanding of her own interests and career aspirations. In the aftermath of the successful rescue operation, Sarah spent considerable time talking with David and other search and rescue professionals about their work and the training required to become qualified for such operations. She learned that her background in environmental science, combined with her demonstrated skills in wilderness travel and emergency coordination, would provide an excellent foundation for pursuing specialized training in search and rescue operations. The revelation that she could potentially build a career around combining her love of wilderness environments with meaningful work helping people in emergency situations felt like a perfect alignment of her interests and values, something that none of her previous career considerations had achieved. The experience also strengthened the bonds between Sarah and her four friends in ways that their regular adventures had never accomplished, as they had worked together under genuine pressure to contribute to something more important than their own enjoyment or education. Jake discovered an interest in emergency communication systems that would eventually lead him to specialize in that field, rather than general outdoor adventure work. Emma found that her photography skills were particularly valuable for documenting evidence and search areas, opening up a potential specialization in supporting law enforcement and rescue operations that she had never previously considered. When they finally returned to Phoenix after their extended weekend in the wilderness, Sarah knew that her life had been permanently changed by the experience. Instead of feeling uncertain about her future career direction, she now had a clear vision of pursuing specialized training in wilderness search and rescue operations, potentially working with the National Park Service or other agencies that coordinated emergency response in remote areas. Her parents were initially concerned about the risks associated with such work, but they were also impressed by the maturity and sense of purpose that Sarah demonstrated when describing her experiences during the rescue operation. The friendship between the five of them had also evolved during their shared experience, creating a deeper level of trust and understanding that would sustain their relationships even as their careers took them to different parts of the country. They had discovered that they could depend on each other in genuine emergencies and that their individual skills complemented each other in ways that made them effective as a team, lessons that would influence their personal and professional relationships for years to come. Sarah eventually pursued specialized training in wilderness search and rescue operations, becoming certified in technical rescue techniques and emergency coordination protocols that allowed her to work with various agencies throughout the southwestern United States. Her bilingual abilities and cultural background proved valuable in working with diverse populations who found themselves in emergency situations in wilderness areas, and her experience during the Lisa Patterson rescue became a foundation story that she would share with other aspiring search and rescue professionals. The annual reunions that Sarah and her friends continued to hold at the Grand Canyon took on additional meaning after their shared rescue experience, serving not only as celebrations of their friendship, but also as opportunities to support search and rescue training exercises and public education programs about wilderness safety. Their story became part of the training curriculum for civilian volunteers who wanted to support professional search and rescue operations, demonstrating how ordinary people with appropriate preparation and teamwork could make significant contributions to emergency response efforts. The transformation that began during that graduation weekend at the Grand Canyon continued to influence Sarah's life choices for years to come, as she built a career that combined her environmental science background with her passion for helping people in emergency situations. The experience taught her that the most meaningful work often emerged from unexpected circumstances, and that being prepared to respond to other people's needs could lead to discovering her own deepest interests and capabilities. Looking back on that weekend 12 years later, Sarah recognized it as the moment when her adult life truly began, not because of her college graduation, but because of the way the rescue operation had revealed her authentic interests and capabilities. The sunset they had planned to watch as a celebration of their friendship had been interrupted by someone else's emergency, but that interruption had led to discoveries about themselves and their relationships that were more valuable than any ceremony or planned celebration could have provided. The lesson that meaningful experiences often come from responding to unexpected challenges rather than from following predetermined plans became a guiding principle in Sarah's approach to both her career and her personal relationships, influencing decisions she would make for decades after that transformative weekend at the Grand Canyon.